Bulingana, stories from Eastern Province, Zambia. Episode 3, Ketty. Why do you just get on really well with some people and others you just can't stand? That's before you even know anything about each other's personality, likes and dislikes, etc. More like magnetic attraction or repulsion. Maybe something like energetic patterns resonating harmoniously, and some resonating with dissonance, clashing. I talked about this in the second podcast, talking about such magnetism crossing cultural boundaries. I do have a lot of ideas on this subject. I studied microbiology at university, but I was fascinated by the things that were not being explained. Life and death. How physical characteristics are formed when genes determine only function, not form. But if I get started on such a fascinating journey, I fear I will never get to the point of this podcast. So the story I'll tell today is about being drawn halfway around the world to meet one who became like a daughter to me, and her mother, who is one of the dearest friends I've known. I told in the last episode why I went to Zambia, but there was something else that didn't show its relevance until the second trip I made out there. I had what I can only call a prescient vision, some months before I went to Zambia that first time. I didn't know at the time that I was somehow, foreseeing the future, something like that. I was intensely into music production. I would work on a piece of music, really focused into what I was doing, morning till night. I'd have to make myself stop, cook some lunch, and it was at those times letting go of the music as much as I could, so I was empty-headed, that something like an awake dreaming had the insistent presence of a child, a girl child, tugging at my sleeve, as it were, trying to communicate something to me, but communication for some reason wasn't straightforward. Yet her presence seemed to be somehow delightful. Aha, I thought. Well, this is certainly fairies riding unicorns kind of stuff. I had no idea why such an image had popped into my head. It had nothing to do with my music I was working on. But it felt external to me, like a ghost. After a few days, the vision faded and I forgot all about it. I went on to meet Ketty, the deaf girl of this story, but it wasn't until the second year of knowing her. She was trying to describe a cartoon she'd seen on my computer on YouTube, making 2 sets of circles with her hands in the air, enthusiastically at first, then getting more and more forlorn in her face and her gestures, seeing my trying but not understanding face. Then suddenly, I got it. I went to the computer, found the cartoon, Mickey Mouse. She clapped with delight. Yes! Check out a picture of Mickey if you want. 2 sets of big circles for his ears and his feet. And that triggered that memory of the vision that I'd had years ago. And I suddenly realized it was you. It had taken over a year of knowing her before that vision awoke from my memory. This universe is a delightful mystery, and the more open we are, the more of that mystery comes into our life. That's my experience anyway. Back to that first meeting when Alice brought her daughter to the lodge that day. Ketty sought out my company pretty much every day after that. It can be exhausting spending a day with a 6-year-old, but the pleasure I got from that magic that seemed to be around her more than made up for that. I usually get on fine with most kids. I probably have a bit of a childlike mindset, if truth be told, a strong sense of the ridiculous, an easy giggler, stuff like that. But there was something about Ketty which was way beyond her age. That becomes clearer as time goes on, and her vision is so strong. Sure, we know that when one sense is lost, especially sight or hearing, the other senses become more developed. But there was an extra dimension also. Sometimes I could pick up some aspect of the vision of the world as she saw it. Like, we're in the orchard at the lodge. Mango, orange, lemon trees. Ketty clutches at my arm, pointing. Look. I look. What is it? It's one of the tree snakes that you hardly see because of its camouflage. Get ready to make a swift exit. They can be one strike and you're out, snakes. I suddenly realize it's nothing like that. It's very simply the pattern of shadows and sunlight chasing each other across the leaves of the tree. I get it. Suddenly, I see it as she does in a world of silence. Empathy plus. Isaac Kazembe said to me one day, Tony, we've been watching you and we want to know, how do you do that? Just communicate with Ketty like you do. I told Isaac I had no idea that I was doing anything different from anyone else. But he said, no, we can see how you connect with her. Sweet. I told you last time about agreeing with Alice that I would get the funds together for Ketty's specialist deaf education. What I didn't realise at the time was that I could have caused her big trouble with the lodge director. I told last time that I'd fallen out with that director when she had insulted me for some random reason, but I hadn't realised how badly the staff were treated, apart from a few of her favourites. She called the staff volunteers so they could be paid less than the minimum wage, which was still better than complete poverty. That's why people put up with the abuse and the shouting. The director had already told me on no account to give anyone anything. All help or donations had to pass through her. I kept her diplomatic tongue in my mouth at that time instead of telling her I'd do what I damn well pleased. I'll let Alice tell you her story. Note the bit where she says they were not allowed to befriend the guests in case those guests were shocked when they found out how the director was treating the Zambian staff.
That year, I didn't know that it was going to be the year of my miracle. Because my daughter was born deaf, she was supposed to go to a deaf school, which is very expensive, that not every child can have the opportunity to go to school. For me, that was my only prayer. Our director didn't want us to accept any offer from our white visitors. She wanted everything to go through her. Anyone who wants to support a family or a friend has to pass through the director, or he can divert that support to her favorite people. And also, we were not allowed to be friends with white people because she didn't want us to tell how she was treating us, and in fact how she really was, because she used to do things that sometimes the guest becomes shocked when you tells them how she treat us, something like that. There were some secrets which we were keeping until that year when something called destiny happened. Tony came to Tico as a guest. I was seeing him just as a visitor. Every day we could greet because I was working at the kitchen serving some guest food. He could come at the kitchen, we greet, until one day someone told him about my daughter. Then he came, he kindly asked me if it was fine with me to bring her to Tico, because he wanted to meet her. So one evening I came with her to Tico. I don't know how those two connected. They became friends in a silent world. One day, Tony called me. He wanted to know more about Ketty. I told him everything and my wish to take my daughter to school. To my biggest shock, he asked me if he could support my daughter on her education. That was the biggest shock of my life because I was not expecting that from him, because I didn't know anything about him. And then that time we couldn't trust any white people who came to Tico, because sometimes they used to report us to the director, and then the director can come and shout at you. So we always used to give our white guests some distance, like we didn't talk or interact with them. So when he asked me about supporting my daughter, I was afraid, but at the same time, my heart was filled with joy. It was like my biggest dream has come true. I said yes without thinking about what the director will say or will do to me, or maybe I'll lose my job. So for me, I don't know how it happened. I slowly trusted Tony that this was between us. She was not going to tell the director. I was fine with Tony, and that is how we became friends and more like family.
I arranged a trip with some of my new friends to Maguero School for the Deaf out on the Malawi border, up a long, rough track for many kilometers, right out in the bush. There are only 2, maybe 3 specialist schools for deaf children in Zambia. Amazingly, this one was only 150 kilometers away, boarding of course. But when we got there, and I met Nora, the headmistress, my heart was touched big time by her gentle kindness. And just the compassionate feel of the place. We agreed that Ketty should start in a year's time when she was 7. And that's how it was. A year later, back with the money, sitting in front of the computer in my room at the lodge with Ketty and Alice, pictures of Maguero on the screen, Ketty's eyes wide, pointing to herself. Me? Yes. Eyes go even wider. She does the sleeping sign. Am I going to be sleeping there? Yes, we tell her. She's so excited. Well, I was scared she'd be afraid of leaving home. In fact, the lovely lady who looks after the children like a mother at the school told us much later that she'd cried herself to sleep the first few nights. Then suddenly, one morning, pulled herself together, was first out to the ablution block to wash herself, dived right into the school experience and the joy of learning. A sign of her big heart is that the little soft toy husky dog I'd given her to snuggle with at night, she shared with the other young first-year girls so that some nights they weren't so lonely also. Deafness, or any handicap, is sometimes regarded as some kind of curse, especially out in the bush. Often the father may disown the child, occasionally the mother, but not so often. It's tragic. Ketty is loved by all who know her on the compound where she lives and at the lodge. Maybe because of her bright presence. But all her extended family would do anything to protect her. I don't see her as being handicapped anyway. Ketty World is a bright, sunny place most of the time, full of love. She has an inner world that you are privileged to get a glimpse of sometimes. There's even music in that world, she has told me once. She's a lucky kid, and I am privileged to have met her. School was such a good thing to happen for her. She has loved it from the start, and it's given her an expression for her precocious intelligence. She came second in a Zambia-wide chess competition last year for children of her age. There's not much opportunity for deaf people in Zambia. We hope that she will in turn become a teacher of deaf children herself. Certainly, she has a talent for teaching. On my most recent visit, she patiently started teaching me sign language because I've been so slow in picking it up. When I'd had enough, she would be like, "Come on, just one more time going through these words." She taught the grown-ups at the lodge how to do jigsaw puzzles when she was just 8. They don't have such puzzles in Eastern Province, so I brought them. And she'd mastered the skill in less than a day. It made us laugh to see her going from table to table, showing someone. Like this. Then the next table. Thumbs up. Yeah, you're doing good. When we go to Maguero, the school, either to visit or pick Ketty up at the end of term, some keen-eyed little boy usually runs excitedly in the direction of the girls' dorm, signing, "Ketty, Ketty, your father's here." Wonderful. It reminds me of that first day at school. Ketty with her hand in mine, queuing up with some other parents to pay the fees. I'm talking with the man in front of me, standing with his daughter. He looks at Ketty. "Is this your daughter?" Nora, the head, is standing nearby and overhears. She looks across at me and grins. I laugh, pointing at my light skin and Ketty's very dark skin. But I tell him I'd be so proud to have this girl as my daughter. Every year now, I return to Zambia. Ketty's a teenager now, but we're still close. And these days, Alice and her meet me at the airport, a joyful meeting for which they've done a 7-hour journey to be there. Then we drive back the 7 hours and I merge back into African mode. Alice started building a house on her compound so I could stay there in future. I was really touched because she gave up her job at the lodge long ago, but between us we finished that house, so I won't have to stay in a lodge now. So here's the last word from Alice, and I'll see you next time.
As time goes on, though we are people from different continents, different cultures, different color, but Tony did not only become friend with my daughter Ketty, only become friends to me, my sisters, my brothers. Talk of the people in the compound. Everyone. We can sit together, eat together, cook, do so many things together.